Okay, so let's talk about a few basic logical relationships. And again, these are going to be things that you will immediately recognize and you will wonder why you needed me or anybody else to teach you this. And I'm saying the reason that we need to be taught these things is because sometimes we're unaware of them and we don't actually think in logical and coherent ways. You also need to know these things because it is very common in our culture, in our world right now, to oppose these ideas, to say that they don't actually make sense. But in order for people to say they don't make sense, they have to assume that they make sense. People who try to oppose the fact of the laws of logic actually use the laws of logic in trying to defeat them. Okay, so remember I said there's a difference between logical possibility, the term probability, and the term plausibility. All right. So the first relation that we're going to discuss is logical consistency. And I can't really stress enough how important logical consistency is in the way that we think and the way that we speak. All of us assume that people should be logically consistent in their beliefs and their thinking. We all assume this, all right? But in order to understand it, you had to first understand a little bit about what's logically possible and the difference between possibilities and probabilities. So, two statements, two sentences are logically consistent if they don't imply any logical impossibilities. They don't imply anything contradictory, no matter how improbable it might be. So, for example, one of the two sentences I found in one of the textbooks that I use is Abraham Lincoln ate pecan pie on his 13th birthday. All right, that's the first sentence. JFK, John F. Kennedy, ate pecan pie on his 13th birthday. Are those two sentences logically consistent, right? Now think about this. Are they logically consistent means, is there any contradiction between the possibility of these two statements? Even if you think it's very unlikely that that actually happened, that's not what we're asking. We're not asking if it actually happened by like reading diaries or stories about the two guys. We're not asking about actual possibility. We're not asking about probability. We're simply asking, are the two statements logically consistent? And they are. Right? There's nothing contradictory about the two statements being true at the same time. Now, whether or not they did eat pecan pie, who cares? We don't even know. But I hope you understand that these two statements are logically consistent. Statements are logically inconsistent when it is not possible that they can both be true or that they can all be true. Maybe we have a bunch of sentences, more than just two sentences, right? So, for example, here's one statement. I am 42 years old. I am not 42 years old. Are those statements logically consistent? No, they're not. Because in order for both of them to be true, it's just impossible. If I'm 42, then I can't not be 42. If I'm not 42, then I can't also be 42. That's a contradiction. So these two statements, I am 42 years old, I am not 42 years old, those are inconsistent. They're logically inconsistent. Whereas the first two sentences, Abraham Lincoln ate pecan pie on his 13th birthday, JFK ate pecan pie on his 13th birthday, those are logically consistent, even if that never actually happened. Now here's a tricky one, right? The first one was obviously logically consistent because all we're asking is, are the two statements or three or four statements all combined together, is it logically possible that they be true? We're not asking if it's actually possible. We're not asking if it actually happened. Whether or not Abe Lincoln ate pecan pie on his 13th birthday and whether or not JFK ate pecan pie on his 13th birthday, whether that actually happened is not what we're asking. It's irrelevant. We're asking, is it logically possible that they're both true? If it's logically possible that they're both true, then you can say that those statements are logically consistent. If it's not possible that they're both true, so I am 42 years old, I am not 42 years old. If it's not possible for those two things to be true, then they're inconsistent. But here's another one that's kind of tricky. I believe that stealing is morally right. I believe that stealing is morally right. Here's the second statement. It is not morally right to steal. Or you can reword it. Stealing is immoral. All right? So the first statement is, I believe stealing is morally right. The second statement is, stealing is immoral. Are those two logically consistent? Now, your first thought might be, no, they're not. Because in one sense, I'm saying, I believe stealing is morally right. It's okay to steal. But the second statement says, it is not right to steal. Stealing is immoral. But they are, in fact, logically consistent. Why? Because the first statement, I said, I believe it is right to steal. The second statement was making a claim about what is actually moral in the world. So the first statement was about my beliefs about what's morally right and wrong in the world. The second statement was a claim about what is actually morally right and wrong in the world. It is logically possible that I can believe things wrongly. So those two statements are actually logically consistent. They're not actually consistent if one of them is true, but they are logically consistent. It's logically possible that I believe one thing, but that it's not actually true. We believe things that are not true all the time. And that's really the takeaway for why logical consistency is important. We believe things that are not true all the time, and we see in others belief in things that are not true. And if we can show them how their beliefs are inconsistent, if we can show them how what they believe is not actually true based on other things that they believe, then we're showing them using logic how their beliefs are inconsistent. But it's not just about us showing others, it's also about others showing us, because we believe things that are incorrect all the time. And sometimes it takes someone else to show us that. And when they show us that, one of the things they're doing is showing us how our beliefs are logically incompatible or inconsistent.